When people hear the words $400 million, their first thought is usually celebration, champagne bottles popping, and lives instantly changing forever. But when I heard those words, standing in my father's office, the only thing I felt was the floor collapsing beneath my feet. I can still see the look on his face, that cold smirk he wore when he told me that I wasn't needed anymore. My father, the man I had worked beside for years, the man whose shadow I had lived in, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Son, you're on your own now." Then he shoved a suitcase into my hands like I was some stranger trespassing in his home, not his child who had sacrificed blood, sweat, and sleepless nights to help build the empire he had just sold for $400 million. He didn't just kick me out of the company. He kicked me out of his life, and he thought that was the end of the story. But deep down, I knew something he didn't. The night he threw me out, I walked out of that office with my head spinning. The city lights blurred as I dragged the suitcase down the sidewalk, my phone buzzing with congratulations from people who assumed I'd just become rich too. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody knew that my own father had stripped me of everything I had worked for, all in one night. And I didn't tell them. I just kept walking, step after step, like a ghost drifting through streets where no one recognized the storm I was carrying inside me. My father's company wasn't just some random startup he stumbled into. It was our life. He liked to paint himself as the genius behind it, the mastermind who built it from scratch. But I was there through all the messy parts, the years when the company almost collapsed, the nights when the servers went down and I stayed awake until dawn fixing them, the weekends when I skipped birthdays, weddings, and vacations just to keep the system alive. I built the frameworks, the fail-safes, the entire skeleton that held his empire together. But he always took the credit. He always smiled for the photos, shook the hands, and left me standing in the background like some assistant. And for years, I told myself it didn't matter. For years, I swallowed that bitterness, thinking that one day he would look at me and finally say, "Son, I couldn't have done this without you." That day never came. Instead, when the buyout was finalized, he called me into his office. I thought maybe he was finally going to acknowledge me. Maybe he was going to hand me a share, or at least a thank you. But no. He leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of whiskey, and said words that cut deeper than any knife. "You were never cut out for the big leagues. You've been dead weight since day one. It's time you learn how to survive without my money." Dead weight. That's what he called me. The same systems I designed were the reason the buyers even wanted the company. But he dismissed me like I was some intern who fetched coffee. He shoved the suitcase at me, told me to pack up, and left me standing there. I can't even explain the rage and humiliation burning in my chest. I didn't cry, I didn't beg, I didn't say a single word. I just took the suitcase and walked out. But as I closed the door behind me, I had this tiny secret smile tugging at the corner of my lips, because I knew what he didn't. I had built the core of that company with my own two hands, and while my father thought I was just some naive kid desperate for his approval, I had quietly woven in layers of security, safeguards, and proprietary systems that only I understood. The buyers didn't know that yet. My father didn't know that yet. But I knew it was only a matter of time before they found out. That night, I lay in the cheap apartment I'd rented with my last savings, staring at the ceiling. Every part of me was furious, not just at him, but at myself, for allowing him to treat me like that for so long, for giving him my loyalty when he had never truly respected me. I replayed every insult, every time he cut me off in meetings, every time he took credit for my work. And the more I thought about it, the more the bitterness turned into something sharper. Something colder. The next morning my phone rang. At first I ignored it, but then it rang again and again until I finally picked up. It was one of the senior engineers from the company, a guy who had always looked down on me because my last name was the same as the boss's. He sounded panicked. He said, "The system's down. Nothing is working. The buyers are demanding answers." I could almost hear the chaos behind him, Phones ringing, people shouting, keyboards clattering. I let him finish, and then I said the words I had been waiting to say for years. Not my problem anymore. And I hung up. That's when I realized my father's nightmare was just beginning. The buyout wasn't finalized yet. The deal was contingent on the company proving its tech could scale and run smoothly without any hiccups. But the tech couldn't run without me. I'd designed it that way, not out of malice, but because I knew I'd always be there to manage it. No one else understood the architecture like I did. No one else had the access keys, the knowledge of the hidden redundancies, the way it all fit together like a living organism. Without me, it wasn't just complicated, it was impossible. By noon that day, I heard that the investors were already threatening to pull the plug. My father, who had been celebrating just hours earlier, was suddenly staring at the collapse of everything he thought he controlled. And me? I sat in my tiny apartment, sipping cheap coffee, watching the city through the cracked blinds, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: power. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one begging. I wasn't the one standing in his shadow. I was the one holding the key to $400 million. When the knock came at my door that evening, I already knew who it was. I opened it to see him, my father, the man who had thrown me out less than 24 hours earlier, standing there with his hair disheveled, his face pale, and his pride shattered. He didn't even bother with his usual arrogance. He dropped to his knees right there in the hallway, in front of neighbors peeking through their doors, and whispered words I never thought I'd hear. "Please, I need your help. They're going to pull the deal." And in that moment, standing over him, I realized I had the chance to decide his fate. When I closed that apartment door on my dad, I thought the silence afterwards would feel like freedom. For years I had lived in his shadow, under his rules, suffocating in the constant reminder that nothing I did was ever enough. I expected that once I walked away, I would feel lighter. But instead, my chest felt like someone had dropped a stone on it. The weight of betrayal mixed with something even worse: grief. Because no matter what kind of man he had become, he was still my dad. And hearing him call me dead weight cut deeper than any wound money could fix. I paced back and forth across my one-bedroom apartment, the same one I'd rented on my own, away from his mansion and endless luxury. My phone buzzed every few minutes. Calls from board members, from old colleagues, even from people I hadn't spoken to in months. Everyone suddenly needed me. The very same people who used to pass me in the hallways at my father's company without so much as a glance were now dialing my number, their voices laced with desperation. I ignored most of them, but one message stopped me cold. It was from Ethan, the company's lead engineer. He had always been decent to me, even when others weren't. His voicemail was shaky, like he was whispering while looking over his shoulder. He said, "Listen, man, I don't know what you did, but the system won't hold. They're trying everything, but it's locked down tighter than Fort Knox. The buyers are demanding answers, and your dad is losing it. He told everyone this was your fault, said you sabotaged the company. But I know better. I saw the code. This was built years ago, not overnight. If you don't step in, this whole thing is going to blow up." I sat down slowly, my hands trembling as I replayed his words. He was right. This wasn't sabotage. It was force out. Back when I was still naive enough to believe my father would eventually see my worth, I had created a series of security protocols, not to destroy the company, but to protect it. I had seen too many vultures circling, ready to tear apart what my grandfather had started and my father had grown. I thought if something ever happened to me, or if someone tried to sell us out, the safeguards would force them to come to me. I never imagined my own father would be the one triggering them. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing his voice, the way he told me I wasn't cut out for the big leagues, the way his eyes had gone cold when he shoved that suitcase into my hands. Every memory of working beside him, every sacrifice I made, every time I put my life on hold to make his dream flourish, it all replayed like a cruel movie in my head. But the more I thought about it, the clearer things became. This wasn't about revenge for me. It wasn't about watching him squirm. It was about respect. For years, I had been his son, in name only. He wanted a soldier, a pawn, a shadow he could mold into another version of himself. And when I refused to become that, he decided I was expendable. Now, fate, or maybe karma, had placed the power in my hands. By morning, the calls had intensified. My inbox was flooded. Some begged, some threatened. One even offered me a private payout if I played ball. But the message that truly made me pause came from my father himself. It wasn't a voicemail, it was a text. Short, cold, almost businesslike. "We need to talk. Urgent." For a long time, I just stared at it. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he had done, just urgency, as if I were another employee he could order around. Around noon, there was a knock on my door. Heavy, insistent. I froze, my heart pounding, because I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. My dad. But what I saw through that small circle of glass wasn't the powerful CEO I had known my entire life. It wasn't the man who barked orders and signed billion-dollar contracts without blinking. It was a man who looked broken. His hair, usually slicked back and immaculate, was a mess. His suit was wrinkled like he had slept in it, or more likely hadn't slept at all. And his eyes were bloodshot, desperate. "Son," he said the moment I cracked the door open. His voice was hoarse, stripped of its usual authority. "Please, we need to fix this." I didn't answer. I didn't even open the door all the way. He pressed his hand against the frame, leaning closer. "They're pulling out. The buyers, the board, everyone's turning on me. The deal is collapsing, and if it goes under, everything I built goes with it." Everything he built. Not once did he mention me. Not once did he say we. "You kicked me out," I finally said, my words low, steady. "You told me I was nothing." He flinched, like the memory had pierced through his armor. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. But you've got to understand, this isn't just about me. Hundreds of employees, their families, the reputation of our name. It's all at stake." I almost laughed. For years he had told me emotions were weakness, that business didn't care about feelings. And now, here he was, using guilt as his last bargaining chip. "Why should I help you? Why should I save you when you couldn't even stand by me for a single day?" His face twisted. Pride and desperation battled in his expression. For a moment, I thought he might snap back into the man I knew, the ruthless, cold executive who saw everyone as replaceable. But then, his shoulders sagged, and for the first time in my life, I saw him vulnerable. "Because without you," he whispered, "everything falls apart." The silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever felt. I could hear my own heartbeat, feel the weight of years of pain pressing down on me. This was the moment I never thought would come. My father, the man who had once seemed invincible, was on the verge of losing everything, and I was the only one who could stop it. I didn't give him an answer. Not yet. Instead, I closed the door gently but firmly, leaving him standing there. His muffled voice called my name through the wood, but I didn't move, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting on his timeline. This time, the power was mine, and he was going to learn exactly what that felt like. By the time I sat down that night, exhaustion hit me like a freight train. The kind of exhaustion that doesn't just drag at your body, but claws at your mind. I'd been running calculations in my head all day, checking the timing, the systems, the layers of protection I had coded into my father's empire. He thought throwing me out meant cutting me off, but the truth was, every single heartbeat of his $400 million deal depended on me and only me. That thought should have made me feel vindicated, triumphant even, but it instead weighed on me,
because I knew the storm wasn't coming tomorrow. It was already here. I remember sitting in that tiny apartment, staring at the duffel bag he had tossed at me, still lying half unzipped on the floor. My entire life reduced to one suitcase. Meanwhile, across the city, he was clinking glasses of champagne with men in suits worth billions. To him, I was already erased. But as I sat there in silence, my phone buzzing every few minutes with numbers I didn't recognize, I felt the first crack forming in his carefully polished empire. He had built his castle on the foundation of my code, and I had never given him the master key. At first, I ignored the calls. Let him sweat, I thought. Let my father realize just how badly he had miscalculated. But by the fifth call in under an hour, curiosity got the better of me. I picked up, my voice flat. On the other end, it wasn't my father. It was one of the corporate lawyers, a man who always treated me like I was just the kid in the room. But tonight, his voice was strained, tight, almost frantic. "Listen," he said, skipping the pleasantries. "We need you to come in tomorrow morning. There's an issue with the buyer's verification process. They're asking for system access, and it seems we don't have the proper clearance." I almost laughed. Proper clearance? That was a polite way of saying the system was locked and only I could open it. I let him ramble, pretending I didn't know exactly what was happening. He begged me to reconsider, to not let a family disagreement jeopardize something as monumental as this deal. But I stayed cold, asking him why he was calling me instead of my father. The pause on the line told me everything. My father had too much pride to call me yet. He'd rather let his empire bleed than admit he needed the son he had discarded. When the call ended, I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt something sharper, like standing on the edge of a cliff and knowing the ground could crumble beneath you at any second. I thought about the years I had spent hunched over a glowing screen, building systems not just to secure data, but to secure my place in a world that constantly told me I didn't belong. And now those very systems were about to decide the fate of a $400 million empire. The next morning came too quickly. My phone buzzed again at dawn. This time the name flashing across the screen made my heart skip. It was him, my father. For a moment, I almost didn't answer. I wanted him to sit in the discomfort, to feel the sting of his own arrogance. But eventually, curiosity won. I swiped to answer, holding the phone just long enough to hear the tremor in his voice. "Son," he said, and the word sounded foreign on his tongue. "We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, savoring the silence. For years he had spoken to me with authority, with certainty, with the kind of dominance that comes from believing money is the only language that matters. But now his voice cracked under the weight of desperation. I didn't make it easy for him. I asked him why he should help a man who kicked me out like trash less than 24 hours ago. He tried to soften his tone, to say he was under pressure, that he didn't mean it, but I wasn't a child anymore. I heard the contempt in his voice yesterday when he said I was dead weight. No amount of backpedaling could erase that truth. Still, part of me wanted him to beg, not because I wanted revenge in the childish sense, but because I wanted him to finally recognize the truth. I was the backbone of his empire. I was the silent architect holding everything together. Without me, his millions were worthless. So I told him to meet me in person. No lawyers, no board members, just us. He agreed instantly, like a drowning man grabbing at a rope. When I arrived at the office, I didn't walk through the back door like I always used to. I walked through the front, past the receptionist, whose eyes widened when she saw me. The whispers started before I even reached the elevator. Everyone knew something was wrong. Deals worth hundreds of millions don't hit snags unless something catastrophic is happening. And this was catastrophic. The boardroom was buzzing when I stepped inside. Men in suits sat hunched over laptops, lawyers whispered urgently, and the buyers, sharp-eyed executives flown in from across the world, looked visibly impatient. And at the head of the table sat my father, pale, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might shatter. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Not pride. Something I had never seen before. Fear. I didn't sit down right away. I let the silence hang heavy in the room. Finally, one of the buyers spoke, his accent cutting through the tension. "We were told the systems could be verified today, but we are unable to proceed without the original architect." He gestured at me. "Him!" The room turned. Every eye landed on me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the forgotten son, the quiet kid in the corner. I was the axis everything turned on. My father cleared his throat, forcing the words out. "Son, we need your help." And there it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence hang heavy in the room. Finally, one of the buyers spoke, his accent cutting through the tension. "We were told the systems could be verified today, but we are unable to proceed without the original architect." He gestured at me. "Him!" The room turned. Every eye landed on me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the forgotten son, the quiet kid in the corner. I was the axis everything turned on. My father cleared his throat, forcing the words out. "Son, we need your help." And there it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. I didn't answer right away. I let them sweat. Instead, I walked slowly to the head of the table, pulled out a chair, and sat down directly across from him. I folded my hands on the table, leaning forward just enough to meet his eyes. "You threw me out yesterday," I said, my voice steady, deliberate. "Why should I save you today?" The silence that followed was absolute. No shuffling papers, no whispered legal jargon, just silence. Even the buyers leaned forward, intrigued, because this wasn't just business anymore. This was blood. This was betrayal laid bare for the world to see. My father swallowed hard, his hands twitching against the table. For the first time in his life, he looked small, vulnerable, beaten. And it was me, his so-called dead weight, that had put him there. When I opened the door that morning and saw my father standing there, the man who once called me his pride, then spat me out like a piece of gum when the money hit his account, I thought I was hallucinating. The arrogance I'd always known in him was gone. His shoulders slumped. His tie was crooked. His face looked 10 years older than it had yesterday when he kicked me out of his mansion with nothing but a suitcase. He wasn't here as the man who owned a multi-million-dollar empire. He was here as a man stripped of power, a man who needed me. He didn't even wait for me to invite him in. He stepped forward, his hands trembling. "Son," he muttered, his voice breaking in a way I had never heard before. "We have to talk. Please." For a moment, I just stood there. The image of him yesterday was still fresh in my mind. Him leaning back in his leather chair, telling me I wasn't cut out for the big leagues, smirking as though my existence was disposable. I remembered the humiliation, the sting, the way he tossed me aside like all my years of loyalty meant nothing. And now, less than 24 hours later, this same man was practically bowing. I leaned against the doorframe and crossed my arms. "You threw me out yesterday. Why should I save you today?" The words seemed to slice into him, but I wanted him to feel it. I wanted him to feel every ounce of betrayal I had felt. He swallowed hard and glanced down at his expensive shoes before forcing the words out. "Because everything is collapsing. The buyers discovered the systems don't function without you. They're threatening to pull the entire deal. If that happens, I lose everything. We lose everything." I almost laughed, but it came out as a bitter smirk. "We?" I asked. "Don't you mean you? You made it very clear yesterday I wasn't part of your world anymore. You said I wasn't cut out for it, remember?" His eyes closed like the weight of my words was too heavy. For the first time, I saw real desperation in his face. He wasn't faking. The mighty king of business was crumbling at my doorstep. "Son," he whispered, almost choking on the word, "I was wrong." Hearing those 3 words from him was like hearing thunder in the middle of a silent desert. My father never admitted mistakes. He never apologized. He always thought admitting weakness was death. And now he was spitting out words that tasted like poison to him because he knew without me, his $400 million dream would vanish like smoke. But inside me, a storm was raging. Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face. Part of me wanted to make him grovel more, to make him feel the way he had made me feel. But another part of me, the son who still remembered late nights coding in his office just to impress him, wanted to finally hear him say he needed me. I let the silence hang until it burned him. Then I stepped back. "Come inside," I said flatly. He nearly stumbled with relief, walking into my small apartment, a place he once mocked as a pit stop for losers. His suit seemed too big for him now. His eyes scanned the room as though he couldn't believe his fortune had dragged him into this space. We sat. He didn't waste time. "The deal isn't closed. They're holding the funds in escrow. They want proof the tech is stable without you. I told them it was, but when they tested it, they realized the truth. You built it with safeguards only you can unlock." His voice dropped lower, trembling. "Son, if I lose this deal, I lose everything. My reputation, my partners, my empire, it all collapses. I need you to fix it. Just show them the systems work, please." I leaned back, letting his desperation sink in. Then I said what I had wanted to say for years. "Do you have any idea how much I wanted to hear you say that when I was breaking my back for you? Do you know how many nights I begged for a shred of recognition? And now, after you've cashed out and cut me off, you suddenly realize I'm worth something?" He clenched his jaw, struggling, finally whispered, "You're not just worth something. You're everything. Without you, none of it exists." The words hit me. They should have satisfied me, but instead they made me ache. I realized I had spent years craving validation from a man who only valued people when he needed them. I saw clearly now. I didn't need his approval. I never had. I stood and walked to the window, staring at the city below. My voice was steady, almost calm. "I'll make you a deal. You sign over the controlling stake, 51%, to me, permanently. If you do that, I'll unlock the systems and let the buyer see the company can run. If not," I turned back and looked him in the eye, "then you can watch your empire burn." His face turned white. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious," I said. "This isn't about money anymore. This is about respect, about finally giving me what's mine." He slammed his fist against the table. "That company is my life, and I was supposed to be your son. But yesterday, you made it clear what you meant to me. So now, you'll see what you mean to me." For a long moment, he didn't speak. His breathing was heavy, his eyes wild. Then, slowly, the fight drained from his face. His shoulders sagged again. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll do it." The next few hours were a blur. Papers were drawn up, lawyers confirmed everything, and for the first time in my life, I signed my name not as the forgotten son, not as the disposable worker, but as the owner, the controlling shareholder. When the ink dried, I looked at him. He couldn't even meet my eyes. I finally understood the truth. Power doesn't come from money. It comes from choice. And for the first time, the choice was mine. The next morning, we stood together in the boardroom as the buyers came in. My father sat quietly, a shadow of the man who once dominated rooms like this. I walked to the front, laptop in hand, and began running the systems. The buyers watched closely, nervous. Then, with a few keystrokes, I unlocked the safeguards. The entire system roared to life, smoother and faster than ever. One of the buyers looked at me, impressed. "So you're the one behind all this?" I nodded. "Yes, and from this point forward, I'm the one in charge. All eyes turned to my father.
He stayed silent, staring at the table. He knew he had no power left. The buyers exchanged glances, then smiled. Good, then we're confident the future of this company is secure. Let's finalize. And just like that, the $400 million deal was saved. But this time, I wasn't cut out. I was cut in. More than that, I was the one holding the keys. As we left the boardroom, my father tried to walk beside me, but I stopped him at the door. You had your empire, I said quietly. Now it's mine. For once, he didn't argue. He just nodded, his eyes filled with something I had never seen before, regret. That night, I stood on the balcony of my new penthouse, looking out at the city lights. The deal was closed, the power was mine. But more than the money, more than the control, the real victory was this. He had thrown me away like I was nothing. But in the end, I proved I was everything. And when people ask me what it cost to take it all back, I just smile and say, everything my father thought he could buy with money, I took back with the truth.